All right, welcome back to 5 on Fridays, another episode, another Ask the Experts segment with Megan Arnold, our exercise physiologist from Front Street Fitness. How are you today, Megan?
Doing really well. How are you today?
I'm good. Happy to have you back. Happy to dive in. If you missed part 1, go back and watch it. We talked about what is the mind-muscle connection, and we plugged the lifestyle behavior program. Today, we're going to be talking about the differences between mobility and flexibility. And I love this topic. We touched on it sometime last summer, but this is more of a deep dive series. So we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about that today. I think oftentimes those words get used interchangeably, Megan, but realistically, while they're like cousins, they're talking about movement and the body, they're not the same, and we need to differentiate them. So let's dive into what that means and what is the difference between those two terms, mobility and flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get this question all the time. Both of these terms are very much interrelated. When we're referring to flexibility is a component of health-related fitness, and it's referring more to muscles, ligaments, and tendons and their ability to move or elongate through a passive full range of motion. So when one thinks of flexibility, it's often what you would think of with a static stretch per se. So you're taking that body part to its endpoint in the range of motion and passively, or just holding the position there, letting gravity do the work. And then eventually that muscle, that ligament, that tendon will start to lengthen because of the repetition of that position. Whereas when we're referring to mobility per se, mobility is more of a joint related range of motion term. So mobility is active, and it's an active muscular control through a complete full range of motion. So if I were to back up here and let's say we're talking about, the musculature of our shoulder. If I were to demonstrate a passive flexibility stretch, I may take the arm across the body. I may use my other arm to just actively hold the elbow, but yet the muscle is passive. So the muscle is not contracting. The muscle is passive, and it's just lengthening and stretching in that area. Now, if I were to want to focus more on mobility, I would kind of be thinking about my joint capsule here. And I would say, okay, let's maybe take the arms down to the sides of the body and then fluidly move the arms up overhead and then take the arms back down. And, continue to repeat that, or whichever the range of motion. Maybe it's internal and external range of motion here. The shoulder is a ball and socket joint, so there's so many options and positions I could demonstrate. But when we're referring to the flexibility portion, that's oftentimes limited by the muscle. Now, when we're talking about mobility, that can be limited more by the joint. So although they're related, they're not referring to the exact same thing. And then you've got to add into that stretching. So we talk about stretching, we talk about flexibility, and we talk about mobility. So when we're talking about stretching, that is the action. So stretching is the action of increasing our flexibility by holding that position. And they're all very important to preventing injury, to improving quality of life because of the ability to do activities of daily living and the ability to perform better. If you're an athlete, if you're a runner, if you're out on the field, if you're tight and rigid and have limited mobility in the joint, but also limited range of motion in that muscle or that ligament, then you're not going to perform at the best of your capability. So they're very important, both athletic speaking and then also to everyday life.
Yeah.
Not to cut you off. I'm on a roll here, Brandon. So for instance, I get really passionate about this. So let's say you're sitting at your desk and your pen's sitting, the camera's not on my desk, but let's say you accidentally knock your pen on the floor and you slide back and you have to stand up and then bend down, essentially you're squatting, and then stand back up and then sit down. If you're lacking that flexibility in the hamstrings, if your low back is tight, if your hips are lacking that mobility piece in your hip joints, then that's that action of standing up, bending down, or squatting, and then standing back up just to pick up that pen that knocked off of your desk is going to be extremely challenging. So flexibility, stretching, and mobility are very important just for everyday life.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I was gonna say before I interrupted you, is there one that you see as being more important or less important? I think I know the answer. They all are intertwined together, but do you have a favorite or one that you think people should work on most often, or what do you think?
I can't say that one is more important than the other. And the reason that I answer that way is that both joint mobility and muscle flexibility, they both play an extreme integral role in functional movement patterns. So muscles support muscles. So if I have one muscle that's tight, then the other muscle is going to say, oh my gosh, I need to help my friend that's tight. And so I'm going to try to take over. Then you've got dysfunction going on because one side is taking over from the other. Then you've got weakness happening, and then the joint may be rubbing. You've got those bones rubbing on one another because of that repetitive motion that's not happening the way it should because of dysfunction. So then your mobility's lacking, your flexibility's lacking, everything's connected. So, they're all very, very important.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I knew that was the answer. Just wanted to tee it up for you to dive back into it. The one thing I did want to ask, or at least like put out there is, all of these things, no matter what you may be dealing with or what you may want to target, that's exactly the reason why we make Tyler, Travis, and Megan and any of the Ohio Health Exercise physiologists available, is to have dialogue and to help you nail down those specific things that are maybe ailing you and then focus on them or how to improve them. So signing up for Front Street Fitness, becoming a member, setting up times to come and meet with them, doing an in-body assessment, all of that stuff is there and out there and available for employees to be able to take better care of themselves and take control over some of these areas like mobility and flexibility in their everyday lives. So anything else you want to add to that piece, Megan, or are you good?
Just another reminder that the body is a system, and the goal is to create balance within our bodies and our systems. And sometimes it takes a lot of patience to do so, focusing really on how the body's feeling rather than, what an exercise may look like or how much weight you're lifting. It all comes down to feeling good. So really start to tap in on what is this exercise? Why am I doing it? And how does it feel?
Yes, super great advice. I'm glad you mentioned that because that ultimately is the most important piece of this whole puzzle. Okay, we will drop all the information on how to join Front Street Fitness and how to get a hold of the team if you've got more questions in the description of the video. Megan, as always, thank you for another great segment on Ask the Expert. We appreciate your time today. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.